The train was about to depart. My fiancé was stubbornly blocking us, insisting on waiting for Shirley, who was washing her face by the river with her princess syndrome. This was the last train to the state-owned textile factory. If we missed it, we would have to stay in the countryside. At the last moment before the train started moving, I gritted my teeth and called a few companions to carry my fiancé onto the train. We managed to get to the factory smoothly and became glorious textile workers. Meanwhile, Shirley missed the recruitment and was forced to stay in the village, marrying an old widower and giving birth to 2 children in 3 years. She died in childbirth during her last delivery and was even arranged for a ghost marriage after death. My fiancé showed no emotion on his face, but on the night of the wedding, he strangled my neck with a hemp rope. With red eyes full of resentment, he said, "It's all because of your vicious heart that Shirley lost the opportunity to work in the city. She suffered so much before she died, why do you get to live well?" When I opened my eyes again, I was back at the moment when the train was about to depart. Looking at my fiancé's back as he gazed towards the river, I let go of his hand. This time, let him reap what he sows. What's the rush? Are you in a hurry to be reborn? Anyway, the recommendation letters are with me. If you dare, get on the train. Leo stiffened his neck, his face full of indignation. But without the recommendation letters, we couldn't even board the train. Hearing the argument, I was still in a daze. The despair and fear of death still enveloped me. Under the scorching sun, several young companions argued fiercely with Leo. Someone wanted to grab the recommendation letters. But Leo's face twisted hideously, holding a match in one hand. "If you push me further, I'll burn the recommendation letters, and no one will go." At these words, everyone turned pale with fright. Being able to go to the city to work in a factory was, in this era, like having one's ancestral grave emit green smoke. "Leo, are you crazy? If you want to wait for Shirley, wait by yourself. Why drag us down? Yes, give us back the recommendation letters quickly." Amidst the accusations, Leo remained unmoved. His eyes were sinister and terrifying. Seeing someone about to come and grab them, he immediately struck the match. "Come any closer, and we'll all go to hell together." For a moment, everyone was stunned. No one dared to act rashly. Leo gritted his teeth. "You are all so selfish. We are all from the same village, somewhat related, yet you want to leave Shirley behind. Shirley's recommendation letter is also with me. If we leave, what about Shirley?" Because Leo was the village chief's son and had some prestige in the village, before setting off, the village chief entrusted them to Leo. And Leo said he would keep them safe for us, so we agreed. Now, everyone regretted it deeply. Someone pulled me and said, "Lena, quickly persuade your fiancé. If we delay any longer, we'll miss the train." I lowered my eyes. When has Leo ever listened to me? The person he cares about wholeheartedly has always been Shirley. My father was a martyr. On the day I was born, the news of my father's death came, and my mother, overwhelmed by the shock, died from excessive bleeding. I grew up with my grandfather. Later, my grandfather also passed away. I was then adopted by the village chief's family. To outsiders, the village chief's family was kind and righteous, willing to take in an orphan like me. But after dying once, I saw clearly that Leo's family adopted me to seize my family's assets. Not only for my family's house and land but also to get my martyr's orphan pension. Leo's cold eyes scrutinized me. "What, Lena, do you also want to stop me?" "No, you're right, we indeed shouldn't leave Shirley behind." I tried hard to conceal the hatred in my heart. Hearing me say this, the fellow villagers immediately became displeased. "Lena, can you be a bit more rational? You can't favor him just because he's your fiancé." "Exactly, if we miss the chance to go to the city and work in the factory because of this, can you take responsibility?" The scolding from the fellow villagers made Leo even more disdainful. He glanced at them coldly and shouted, "What's all the noise? The reason you have the chance to work in the factory is that my dad fought for it for you. If you keep nagging, none of you will go." Leo shook the recommendation letters in his hand, proud and provocative. Seeing that I had been quiet all along, he glanced at me. Lena is more obedient than all of you, you should learn from her. I sneered but didn't refute. Leo was also good at gilding his own face. How did the village chief manage to get so many extra slots for the factory, and what did it have to do with Leo's family? Among our group, some were children of martyrs, others were from families where parents or relatives had made significant contributions to society and were in difficult circumstances. Only Leo and Shirley got their recommendation letters through my father's connections. Leo was the prospective son-in-law of a martyr, so the organization naturally gave him a slot to enter the factory, while Shirley claimed to be my father's goddaughter and even had the village chief testify. In my previous life, I didn't expose it. In this life, I can't let it slide. The scorching sun baked the earth, making everything hot. Not far ahead, the train's whistle sounded sharp like a death knell. A young man named Kevin among the fellow villagers broke down. His father was an old miner. Because of a rainstorm, he was buried forever in the mine, which earned him this slot to enter the factory. Leo! Give me the damn recommendation letter. Kevin lunged forward fiercely. But Leo stepped back, gritted his teeth, and immediately lit the match. With a whoosh, the flame approached the craft paper envelope. Under everyone's astonished gaze, the edge of the paper just started to char. Brother Leo, I'm here. Shirley lifted her pant legs, her fair little face flushed. As she approached, she leisurely took out a small mirror to admire herself. Facing the dissatisfied accusations from everyone, she smiled. What's the hurry? Will the train grow wings and fly away? At this moment, Leo had already put the match back in his pocket. Then, as if presenting a treasure, he handed over the envelope. All right, we can go to the city together now. Kevin was so angry that he gritted his teeth, his fists clenched tightly. When Shirley took the envelope, her fingertips deliberately brushed over the back of Leo's hand and winked at him. How did I not see in my previous life that this pair of adulterers had been secretly involved behind my back? I really believed their excuse of being just brother and sister. The train's whistle sounded again. Kevin snatched the craft paper envelope containing the recommendation letters and shouted at us, "What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and get on the train." The group started running frantically. I jogged behind them. Shirley was holding Leo's hand. As they passed by me, they seemed to notice me only then. Sister Lena, you're running so slowly. Are you still angry with Brother Leo and deliberately lagging behind? Why would I be angry? I had just said. But the goddess of luck did not favor us. The train doors closed completely at that moment. As the train sped away, the surroundings became eerily quiet. My voice was as calm as still water, breaking the dead silence. I haven't visited my grandfather's grave yet. It's fine not to take this train. The train gradually went away, and the sound of the wheels rolling over the tracks faded. A few timid girls covered their mouths and started crying. Kevin and the others looked frighteningly grim. Someone grabbed Leo by the collar and cursed loudly, "You son of a bitch, are you satisfied now?" Shirley, this damned woman, insisted on washing her face. "Is your face so thick that you can't meet people without washing it?" Shirley's face turned completely pale. She trembled and hid behind Leo. I didn't mean it." Leo glared at me angrily. "Lena, don't be sarcastic. No one wanted this to happen." Sarcastic? I laughed. My laughter sounded somewhat eerie on the empty platform. Kevin even vented his anger on me. "Lena, your fiancé did this, shouldn't you be responsible?" "Exactly, we trusted you, that's why we let Leo keep the recommendation letters." The group, full of rage, needed an outlet. I nodded. I understood their irrationality and wouldn't argue with them at this time. Over there, Leo had already been punched several times by a few young men. He was tough, not uttering a sound. It wasn't until Shirley was also pushed by a few girls that Leo completely lost it. He took out a pair of scissors from his pocket and said viciously, "If you dare touch her, I'll cripple you." Seeing his crazed appearance, the group finally calmed down. Shirley hid in Leo's arms, crying pitifully. While comforting her, Leo coldly reprimanded, "What's the hurry? Even if we miss the train, I have other ways to get you to the city." Hearing this, everyone looked at him with hope. Leo smugly curled his lips. "In a few days, a troop will pass by here. We have recommendation letters, the army will definitely let us follow them." Only then did I truly confirm that Leo had also been reborn. In the previous life, there was indeed such a troop. Shirley also wanted to follow the troop to the city at that time, but she didn't have a recommendation letter. Someone asked quietly, "How do you know?" "My dad is the village chief, is it strange that he knows some inside information?" Leo proudly raised his head, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. "Moreover, the commander of the Southern Military District is an old acquaintance of my dad. As long as we mention my dad's name, they definitely won't refuse." Everyone's hearts were filled with hope. Some even began to flatter Leo. Only Kevin stiffened his neck and said discontentedly, "What's there to be proud of? If it weren't for your meddling, why would we need to seek help from the army?" Leo's gaze swept over coldly. Shirley pouted, her voice sweet but with a threatening undertone. "Brother Kevin, don't you want to go to the city anymore?" Kevin was choked up, his face red with anger. I smiled and said, "The army is on a mission, maybe they won't let us get close." Shirley trembled violently, subconsciously grabbing Leo's hand. Leo glared at me as if he wanted to devour me. "What nonsense are you talking about? Stop being sarcastic." "Then let's see." I turned around with a half-smile and walked back to the village. The sunlight stretched my shadow long. In my previous life, I desperately tried to drag Leo away from the countryside, but I didn't expect that he had been scheming against me all along. In this life, I want them to taste what it's like to be in unbearable pain. When I returned to the village, I happened to catch the village chief cursing in his yard. Seeing me back, he frowned. "Lena? Why are you back?" "We missed the train," I replied indifferently. The village chief's face changed drastically, he dropped his carrying pole and ran towards the train station. Watching his back, I sneered. "Leo and Shirley want to go to the city. In this life, I'm afraid they won't be able to." The first thing I did when I got back was to send a letter to someone, canceling my engagement with Leo. In the letter, I detailed the reasons for canceling the wedding, the entanglement between Leo and Shirley, and the fact that Shirley was not my father's goddaughter. 2 days later, the day before the army arrived, I received a reply. The letter clearly stated that they would investigate the matter truthfully, and once confirmed, they would cancel Leo and Shirley's slots to go to the city. Satisfied, I burned the letter. Under the flickering candlelight, my face showed a relieved smile. As agreed, we came to the train station. Under the scorching sun, the train tracks gleamed with blinding white light. Everyone paced back and forth on the platform, extremely anxious. Shirley leaned on Leo's shoulder and smiled provocatively at me. "Sister Lena, why are you ignoring me? Are you still angry with Brother Leo? If you keep this up, be careful that Brother Leo won't take you to the city." I looked at her coldly. She clearly got the opportunity to enter the factory by using my father's name, yet she shamelessly said such things. Leo glanced at me coldly. "You'd better not play any tricks, or you can leave now." Hearing this, I curled my lips into a cold smile. They are arrogant now. I'm just curious to see their reaction when they find out their slots to enter the factory are gone. Why should I leave? I have a slot to enter the factory. You. Leo looked at me with cold eyes. Shirley tilted her head to look at me, her fingertips unconsciously twirling her hair. "Sister Lena, don't make Brother Leo angry again. We women should be gentle and considerate, after all, men are the sky." She deliberately leaned closer to Leo, looking like a delicate and weak daughter flower. I couldn't help but retort, "The chairman said that women hold up half the sky. Are you not following the great man's philosophy?" Shirley's face instantly turned pale. This accusation was too big, she didn't dare to touch it. The atmosphere became tense. The fellow villagers were all watching the drama. Leo glared at me, then raised his hand to gently wipe the sweat from Shirley's forehead. The intimate gesture made everyone look at each other. In this era, even husband and wife wouldn't be so intimate in front of others. Leo stared at me, his eyes full of warning. If you dare to bully Shirley again, when we meet the commander, I will definitely tell him the truth, and your slot to enter the factory. I laughed out loud. Has Leo lied so much that he believes it himself? Before he could finish, military green trucks slowly came into view. Everyone suddenly became spirited, waving and shouting. Shirley was no longer weak, she straightened her back and ran faster than anyone. Leo immediately followed. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching Leo and Shirley hurriedly push past Kevin and others, rushing to an officer. Comrade! We missed the train. Leo took out the recommendation letters. My father and your commander are old acquaintances. These are all children of martyrs, I hope you can take us with you. He deliberately emphasized the words children of martyrs, while his peripheral vision threatened me, fearing I would speak out and expose him. Before the officer could respond, Shirley was already choking with red eyes. My father is Jack, he died on the battlefield. We all have recommendation letters, I hope you can let us on the vehicle for my father's sake. Her sobbing and heartbroken appearance might make uninformed people truly believe that my father was her father. The fellow villagers all looked at me. But in the eyes of outsiders, she was indeed my father's goddaughter. Although everyone inwardly despised her deliberate attempt to get close, no one exposed her at this time. Jack is your father? The officer's eyes lit up. Shirley looked like she was about to cry, with teardrops still on her lashes. But a calculating light flashed in her eyes. Leo stood behind her, proudly lifting his chin, as if victory was already in hand. Yes, Jack is my father, Shirley choked. I grew up listening to his stories and have always dreamed of going to the city to see where my father is buried. Yes, my father did not return to his roots. He and his fallen comrades rest eternally in the martyrs' cemetery. The surroundings immediately erupted. Several soldiers secretly wiped away tears, obviously moved by Shirley's filial piety. The officer's expression became solemn and respectful, and he saluted Shirley. At this moment, I finally spoke up. Shirley, are you really Jack's daughter? Shirley's face turned ashen, and she subconsciously clutched the recommendation letter tightly. Leo quickly stepped in front of her, glaring at me fiercely. Lena, don't make trouble for no reason. Is this the time for jealousy? At this time, the leading officer looked at Shirley doubtfully. Shirley glared at me resentfully before reluctantly saying, I am indeed not Jack's biological daughter, I am his goddaughter. Leo took the opportunity to pull out the forged certificate from the village chief. Comrade, this is a certificate personally written by our village cadre, you can take a look. Several fellow villagers also began to chime in. That's right, we all know that Shirley got the recommendation letter as a martyr's child. Yes, let's get on the vehicle first. Shirley has been close to the hero Jack's family since she was young, we all know that. But in reality, how was Shirley close to my family? She was close to Leo. I wasn't surprised by the fellow villagers' behavior. Although others didn't like Shirley, they were afraid that if something happened to her, it would affect their going to the city. The officer frowned. He took my documents and examined them carefully, then his expression became solemn, and he said to me, Hello, comrade, please get on the vehicle. Leo wanted to scold me a few more times but was stopped by the officer. How come I've never heard that Jack has a goddaughter? Leo and Shirley's faces immediately turned ugly. They exchanged a glance, stammering and unable to utter a word. The officer continued, You'd better not be lying, or you'll go to jail. I stood in the crowd, smiling at Leo and Shirley. The other fellow villagers looked at each other, and no one dared to say anything more. In fact, they all had some doubts about whether Shirley was really my father's goddaughter. After all, in the surrounding villages, everyone was somewhat related, and no one had ever heard of Shirley's connection to my family. Privately, there were already many rumors about this matter. At this moment, I said again, Indeed, this certificate was written by the village chief. Everyone looked at me in surprise. No one expected me to explain for them. Joy flashed in Leo and Shirley's eyes. I smiled. I didn't admit that Shirley was my father's goddaughter, I just said that the certificate was written by the village chief. Seeing that I said so, the officer didn't hesitate anymore and let Leo and Shirley get on the vehicle as well. The vehicle started slowly. Leo and Shirley sat in the vehicle, their faces showing the relief of surviving a disaster. I looked at them, my face expressionless. But inside, I was turbulent. I suddenly changed my mind just now. Kicking them off the vehicle like this would be too easy for them. Maybe these two would still find ways to go to the city in the future. It's better to take them with me and personally make them fall into the abyss, completely cutting off their beautiful dreams. When we arrived in the city, the group looked around curiously. Shirley excitedly pulled Leo's hand. "Brother Leo, I want some face cream." "Okay, then." Leo's words stopped abruptly. He almost forgot that he was no longer the outstanding employee with some assets from his previous life. He had just come from the village, where would he have money? As he was thinking, Leo looked at me. "You pay." "Why?" I looked at him speechlessly. "Why?" "Because you almost caused Shirley and me not to get on the vehicle just now." Leo glared at me fiercely. I raised my eyebrows, about to sarcasm him a few words. Kevin pulled me back. All right, we still need to hurry to the factory to report, don't waste time." Other fellow villagers also quickly. Leo gritted his teeth and said no more. It was getting late, and he didn't dare to delay any further. Seeing the atmosphere was not right, Shirley came out to smooth things over. "It's okay, brother Leo, I'm fine." This made Leo feel even more sorry for her. Leo yanked me hard. "Behave yourself." Then he pulled Shirley away. As they passed by me, Shirley glanced at me provocatively. "Serves you right." At the textile factory, Shirley rushed ahead of me to hand in the recommendation letter. After that, she didn't forget to whisper in my ear, "Your father who died early is still very useful, thank him for me." "Is that so?" "I hope you don't regret it," I said through gritted teeth. "Regret what?" Shirley deliberately flaunted her new watch in front of me. "See this? Brother Leo bought it for me." Shirley looked at Leo, who was negotiating with the person in charge, with a smile on her lips. "Do you know where your annual pension went?" "It's with me." Brother Leo was afraid I wouldn't have money to eat meat. He also said I'm delicate and need to be pampered well. "And you only deserve to eat chaff and vegetables." A surge of immense hatred welled up in my eyes. Shirley always wore new clothes, while the girls in the village were all sallow and thin, only she was radiant. At that time I only thought her parents doted on her. Now I know it was because she was spending my pension to eat and drink well. Thinking of this, my hatred for Leo increased even more. The person in charge was still carefully checking the documents. No one noticed that his brows were furrowing deeper. Seeing my tense and ugly expression, Shirley laughed heartily. Leo occasionally glanced at me from the corner of his eye, as if warning me not to cause trouble. At that time, many reporters had gathered at the entrance of the textile factory for interviews. Shirley and Leo pushed to the front. Shirley shook her shiny black hair and showed a forced strong smile to the camera. "Hello everyone, I am the daughter of a martyr Jack." Upon hearing this, the crowd erupted in exclamations. Jack, the hero who killed over a dozen on the battlefield and finally rushed towards a tank with explosives. Wow, the daughter of a hero. Amidst everyone's admiration, Shirley squeezed out a tear. "Since I was young, I've been looking forward to coming to the city to see my father, to inherit his legacy, and to contribute to the construction of our great motherland." Leo stood beside Shirley, chest out and head high. "That's right. My father is the village chief," and he ran around to get Shirley the opportunity to enter the factory. This time, if we hadn't missed the train and I hadn't contacted the army through my father, the dreams of these martyrs' children to build the motherland would have been shattered. As he spoke, he cast a warning glance at me in the crowd, as if to say, if I dared to speak out, he wouldn't let me off easily. Several fellow villagers looked at each other, their faces red with suppression, but ultimately didn't dare to expose him in front of everyone. No one wanted to provoke the village chief. After all, their families still lived in the village. Kevin clenched his fists, furious. He wanted to rush forward but was firmly held back by the person beside him. That person helplessly and aggrievedly reminded him, "Have you forgotten, your mother is still in the village?" Kevin instantly felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over him, standing there stunned. Leo looked at Kevin provocatively and snorted coldly. At this moment, a reporter shoved a microphone in front of me. "Hello, are you also a child of a martyr?" "Yes," I said, looking at Shirley with a half-smile. Shirley quickly stepped in front, and in a corner where no one noticed, she pinched my arm hard. She wanted to gain attention and admiration as a martyr's child. Leo pulled me behind him and whispered threats and inducements in my ear. "Don't make trouble, I will marry you. Once our jobs at the textile factory are stable, we'll apply for a marriage certificate." The reporters looked at this little episode, puzzled. Shirley quickly pretended to explain, "Sorry, my sister from the same village is a bit shy with strangers." The reporters found it uninteresting and stopped paying attention to me. I stood aside with my arms crossed, watching the show. Go on. The higher you stand, the harder you fall. Seeing that I was quiet, Shirley arrogantly lifted her chin. Then she continued to talk confidently to the camera, painstakingly portraying herself as a hero's descendant who grew up in poverty but remained strong and fearless. At this moment, the person in charge of the textile factory walked out quickly. His face was very ugly, and behind him were several staff members with serious and angry expressions. I secretly rejoiced in my heart. The good show was about to begin. The person in charge's gaze fell on Shirley and Leo, and he said in a deep voice, "You two, come to the office with me." The smile on Shirley's face almost couldn't hold, and she uneasily pulled Leo's hand. Leo was also a bit flustered. Leo subconsciously looked at me. I smiled at him. Leo felt a bad premonition in his heart, but he still pretended to be calm. "What's wrong, Director? Is there a misunderstanding? Did someone say something to you? Our procedures are complete, you can't do this." "Complete?" The person in charge slammed the recommendation letters on the ground. "You actually dared to forge certificates and impersonate children of martyrs." Shirley and Leo's faces turned pale like paper. The scene erupted in chaos. Reporters raised their cameras, creating a mess. Shirley shook her head repeatedly. "No, it's not like that. I am indeed a child of a martyr, I am his goddaughter." Shirley tried to get away with it by using the identity of goddaughter. Cold sweat broke out on Leo's forehead, and he was still arguing, "Director, this is slander." "Director, we..." The person in charge interrupted him. "The military district has already investigated clearly. You and Shirley had an affair and abused power for personal gain to get the factory slots. It's truly despicable." At the mention of military district, Shirley's legs went weak, and she fell to the ground. She trembled and said, I didn't, I just wanted to go to the city, Leo also panicked. He suddenly turned his head to look at me and roared, "Lena, did you do this? You dare to harm us?" I hid behind a reporter, looking scared. I couldn't just watch as my father inexplicably gained an extra daughter. The reporters were in an uproar again. "You are Jack's daughter? Oh my God, what kind of people are these? These two adulterers should go to jail." At this time, several police officers walked in. "You are suspected of forging certificates, insulting the reputation of heroes, and other crimes. Come with us." Shirley couldn't hold it anymore and burst into tears. "It wasn't me, it was Leo, I didn't know." Leo's eyes widened, incredulously looking at Shirley, who was throwing all the blame on him. "Shirley, are you crazy?" Shirley gritted her teeth and avoided Leo's gaze. "It was Leo, he forced me. He likes me, so he forced me to come to the city with him." This statement not only shocked Leo, but also me and several fellow villagers. Kevin spat, "Bah, what a cheap bitch." Leo completely broke down. The person he loved for 2 lifetimes betrayed him at the critical moment. Leo wanted to rush over but was firmly controlled by the police. "Shirley, say that again," Leo said. Shirley shrank her neck and cried out pitifully, "It was you, you forced me." The two who were flirting just a while ago now wished to strangle each other. "Bitch, bitch, I'll kill you," Leo roared. Fortunately, the police were holding him back. I had no doubt that if no one stopped him, Leo would really kill Shirley. As the police were taking Leo away, he was still shouting, "You can't arrest me, that bitch's recommendation letter is fake, but mine is real. I am a martyr's family member, I am Lena's fiancé." I shook my head with a smile. "Leo, why do you think I would still be willing to marry you? You love me, don't you?" Leo seemed to grasp at the last straw, desperately rushing to me. I pushed him away. That was before. After dying once, how could I still love you? Our engagement is cancelled. Hearing this, Leo's pupils suddenly dilated. Others didn't know what dying once meant, but Leo and I both understood. Leo shook his head desperately. "No, it's not like that, it's not, I didn't mean it." Leo was in a state of madness. It was over. Leo knew clearly that it was over. All the reporters surrounded them, pointing microphones at Leo and Shirley. "May I ask, why did you impersonate children of martyrs? Is it true that you had an affair? Why did you make the hero bleed and cry again?" Shirley was dragged away by the police, and as she was put into the police car, she was still screaming, "Don't arrest me, I don't want to go to jail, I don't want." Leo looked dazed, his eyes lifeless as he was escorted into the police car. The siren sounded, taking away this pair of adulterers. The onlookers burst into applause. Several fellow villagers came over and patted my shoulder. It was just the beginning of their suffering. It was not over yet. After the storm subsided, I and several fellow villagers were successfully employed in the textile factory. I worked in the workshop during the day and sorted out the report materials under the dim light at night. Over the years, Leo's family had embezzled my pension, as well as my land and house. To say they raised me, it's better to say they used my pension to support their whole family. Even the village chief's family lived in my house, while their own house was rented out for income. There were also many instances of the village chief abusing his power for personal gain, all of which I carefully listed out. One day 3 months later, the workshop director suddenly called me to the office. When I pushed the door open, I saw an old man in military uniform sitting at the desk. I recognized him. In my grandfather's pile of old photos, I had seen this old man. In my previous life, he had also taken care of me and Leo. General. The general was my grandfather's childhood friend and my father's mentor. In the previous life, General took good care of Leo because of me, which helped him rise to prominence. The recipient of the report letter I sent out some time ago was General. The general looked up, his gaze kind. "Girl, I've read what you wrote, you've suffered." His voice was full of guilt and heartache. He felt he had let down his childhood friend and his disciple who sacrificed early. My nose tingled, and I shook my head. "General, I just want justice." The general nodded heavily, tears falling. Good, good. You've done well. All these years, I was blinded and mistakenly trusted Leo's family, thinking they would treat you well. Rest assured, I will investigate this matter thoroughly and give you justice. Under the general's swift and decisive actions, the investigation results came out quickly. Leo's family had embezzled the pension of a martyr's child, illegally occupied others' land and property, and a series of actions to seize family assets were made public. The village chief was dismissed and imprisoned. With the general's help, my family's house, land, and pension were returned to their rightful owner. At this point, my anxious heart finally settled. 10 years later, I had become a well-known entrepreneur. I was invited back to the village to share my story with the young people, to inspire them. The new village chief was a man who looked honest and down to earth. The villagers warmly welcomed me. I spent a day visiting Most of the once dilapidated mud houses had been turned into brand new small Western-style buildings. There was also a large square where children played and laughed. After it was over, the new village chief quietly pulled me aside, somewhat embarrassed. "There's something I think I should let you know." After Leo and Shirley were released from prison, they got together. I raised my eyebrows slightly. Them? I couldn't even remember what they looked like. "Are they doing okay now?" I asked as if inquiring about two old friends. The village chief sighed. "Leo is really ruined. That bastard is muddle-headed all day, and he beats his wife. When he gets drunk, he says he's a big shot in the factory, even the commander values him." Isn't he afraid of being laughed at? "Shirley complains all day, cursing Leo from head to toe. Half a year ago, she even had a miscarriage because of a fight with Leo." The village chief spread his hands, his face showing some sigh and helplessness. I nodded and said nothing more. Once, I hated them to the bone. Now, they can't stir any waves in my eyes. The next morning, when the sky was just getting light, I strolled alone in the village. When I reached the west end of the village, two familiar yet strange figures came into my view. It was Leo and Shirley. Leo looked very weathered, his back hunched, with quite a bit of white hair at his temples, and his clothes were dirty, yellowed, and tattered. Where was the spirited appearance from his previous life? Shirley stood opposite him, hands on her hips, cursing loudly. Her clothes were also wrinkled and dirty, exuding a sense of destitution. Her voice was sharp and piercing. "What, do you regret it? I heard Lena is back, and you're all out of sorts. But it's too late, she won't look at you now. Get lost." Leo pushed Shirley away, a fierce look flashing in his eyes. But it quickly turned into helplessness and numbness. "I know I'm not worthy of her, a rotten person like me should be entangled with a pest like you for life." Leo, you useless thing, no wonder she doesn't look at you." The two of them exchanged words, insulting and cursing each other. No one noticed me not far away. After some time, Leo suddenly looked up. When our eyes met, he froze entirely. Shirley followed his gaze and saw me, her face changing drastically, stumbling backward. "Lena," Leo murmured. I lightly hummed and turned to leave. Shirley gritted her teeth and chased after me, her eyes full of unwillingness and shame. "Are you satisfied? It's all because of you, you ruined everything for me. It was your greed and selfishness that ruined yourself." I turned back and looked directly at Shirley. Shirley wanted to say something more but was roughly pulled behind by Leo. Leo simply warned Shirley a few words. Then he looked at me, his face full of regret. "Lena, I know I was wrong. These years, I've been living a life worse than death, I regret it so much. Lena, I'll divorce Shirley, let's get back together, okay? This time, I'll treat you well." Before I could react, Shirley slapped Leo. Leo reacted quickly and immediately struck back. Shirley was knocked to the ground, and bright red blood gushed from her lower body. She had a miscarriage? My eyes widened, and I quickly went to call for help. When I left, Leo acted as if nothing had happened. He even kicked Shirley a few times, cursing under his breath. "A bastard child, gone is gone, why cry? Do you think I don't know? Every time there's no rice at home, you go to sleep with the old widower at the village entrance. This child definitely isn't mine." Behind me, Shirley's shrill cries and Leo's curses echoed. The two voices resounded in the empty west end of the village, particularly harsh. After the village chief and others arrived, I left. When I left the village, I heard that Shirley's child was gone. The old widower at the village entrance, upon learning about this, cried his heart out and even fought with Leo. Both of them fought fiercely. Especially Leo, because he drank all year round and didn't work, couldn't even beat the old widower, and even his vital parts were crippled. Back home, I sat in the yard, staring at the book in my hand. The hatred and pain of the past were long gone. I didn't sympathize with Leo and Shirley's current misery. Everything was caused by themselves. And I, through my own efforts, walked out of that dark memory. My bright future is ahead. A gentle breeze blew, as if my grandfather and they were responding to me. I stood up, tears falling, my heart full of relief.